and Wheeler. Delegate Rome, I know that you're there as well. Delegate Watts, I think you had expressed an interest, but I don't see you. Is she there? Okay, very good. And Senator Boysko, welcome again officially. And I know that Mary Hines was going to try to join us as well. So if Mike or someone can let me know that she's here when she gets here, that would be great. So again, let me call the meeting to order. And we do have our summary minutes, item number 2. Let's see, do I need to call roll? How about Mike, could you call the roll?
Mayor Parish?
Here.
Mayor Rochelle?
Here.
Board Member Cristal?
I'm sorry, here.
Chair Randall?
I am here.
And Chair McCain is absent.
Okay.
We
We
do have a quorum, sir.
do have a quorum. Jeff McKay is unable to be with us today. The governor is here in Fairfax for maybe a number of things, but certainly COVID related potentially, and others. So he's unable to be with us. And by the way, don't let me forget, he did provide a statement, which I'd like to read. Mike, help me make sure that I remember to have someone read it, related to the VRE Lorton Ripon Station project's acceptance withdrawal and cancellation, item number 4. It also relates to item number 5 as well. So help me remember to do that. But next on our list, item 2 is should we take up the resolution first? Yeah. I think everyone is aware, we've all been meeting in virtual meetings. There is a resolution finding the need to conduct the June 18th, 2020 meeting electronically of the Finance Committee of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. I'd love to have a motion and a second. And if you make the motion, please let us know your name.
Mr. Chairman, Katie Crystal, move approval of the resolution.
Second.
Okay. Help me, was the motion from Katie Crystal?
Indeed.
Thank you. Katie Crystal made the motion. Jeanette Rochelle seconded the motion to approve the resolution finding the need to conduct the meeting virtually and electronically. Back to item number 2, which is the summary of the minutes of the May 8th meeting. Thank you. The May 8th meeting, and is there a motion with regard to approval of the minutes of the May 8th meeting?
I move to approve the minutes of May 8th, Jeanette Rochelle, Manassas Park.
Is there a second?
Second, Chair Randall.
Chair Randall, thank you so much for that second. Jeanette Rochelle made the motion to approve the minutes of May 8th, second by Chair Randall. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing no discussion, if you could, the members of the committee, if you could let us know how you vote, one by one, if you can. Mike, if you could call the roll, that would be great. Thank you.
Mayor Parish?
Yes.
Mayor Rochelle?
Yes.
Chair Randall?
Yes.
Board Member Cristal?
Yes.
Chair McCain is absent.
Okay, very good. Those pass unanimously with one in absence. We're going to also recognize Mary. I think you are here. Mary Hines. Mary, are you with us?
I am, Hal. I'm here.
Okay, very good. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. We're going to move then to item number 4, which is the VRE Lorton Ripon Station project's acceptance of withdrawal / cancellation. So you all will know, I have asked our staff, both Mike and Monica, to provide us a pretty lengthy discussion of each of these items that we're going to be taking up today, particularly anything related to withdrawal or cancellation. I think it's important for us to know the facts, and as we understand them now, at least, And so we're going to take up item number 4, VRE Lorton Ripon Station Project's acceptance of withdrawal and cancellation. Mike Longy.
Thank you, Mayor. This proposed cancellation or withdrawal, which is unique in its name, that we are proposing either VRE withdraw the projects or the authority cancel them. The reason for that somewhat confusing term is because the VRE staff is reporting that these projects no longer fit the project description that was adopted by the authority. They also have project completion dates that stretch out to 2030. This came to our attention through the executive director's monthly report in May, when their May submission. When we asked VRE about it, they said that it was actually 3 projects, including Franconia Springfield. They quickly clarified the Franconia Springfield project description is still valid. And in addition, the completion date will be much sooner than 2030. Therefore, while we note that only as a side note, that we will be monitoring that project. But the Lorton Station and the Ripon Station, with a combined project value of $16.9 million, VRE has indicated with the evolving DRPT 4th track plans, those project descriptions are no longer valid, and the date, obviously, for completion is stretching out to 2030 or close to 2030. VRE staff had indicated that they would submit a withdrawal recommendation to their various boards, their op board and others, and expected that that would probably be well received. However, due to COVID-19, they had several meetings that were canceled and were not able to do that. The reason we are framing this as a cancellation / withdrawal is, quite frankly, we want to see if the $16.9 million can be included with the $522 million for our current 2-year update. Were VRE to come subsequently and ask to withdraw the project, even if the authority took a cancellation action, we would record the fact that the project was withdrawn, not canceled, so that would be a more accurate historical reflection of what is going on. I think we're simply fighting a calendar here between meeting dates, between various boards, and the driver is, since it does appear the VRE staff is going to recommend withdrawal, the driver here is to be able to put the $16.9 million forward for the PPC meeting, 5 o'clock tomorrow, in order for that discussion to take place for assignments of projects. The formal action would come in front of the authority on their July meeting, obviously prior to approving the update to the 2-year program. I do want to emphasize that the VRE and NVTA staff have been working very closely on this, and I think it's just really the VRE staff does not want to get too far ahead of their board, which we certainly respect on our side of it as well.
Al, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Mary, thank you. I appreciate that. As I mentioned earlier, there is a statement from Jeff McCain, who couldn't be with us today. And if we have that statement available, can either I read it or Mike, do you have it?
Regarding that item.
Has everyone gotten a copy? Not everybody on the WebEx today. Okay. Yeah. There is a statement, and Monica, if you could summarize it. It's relatively short, but if you could summarize it for us.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Parish. Chairman McCain notes that the committee will be considering item 4, which consists of the withdrawals, and he states that as we are aware, both of these projects, as well as the Franconia and Springfield platform improvements, have been impacted by the Virginia Rail Improvement Program. While improvements to the Franconia Springfield station can likely be undertaken in coordination with the Virginia Rail Improvement Program, it cannot advance as previously envisioned. As such, I concur with withdrawing, canceling the project funding. VRE has the ability to apply for regional funds for this station or other capacity improvements in the future, and I welcome them to do so if needed.
Okay, very good. It goes further, but that's in the next item.
Yes.
Very good. I wanted to make sure that got into the record for Chairman McCain. So is the typical motion would be, and I think what I'll do, worry about putting it forward. The motion would be to move the Finance Committee recommendation of authority, cancellation, or acceptance of withdrawal of the VRE Lorton and Ripon Station projects, unencumbering a combined $16.9 million in project funding. Is there a motion?
So moved from Jeanette Ruschel.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
This is Katie Crystal.
Was that Katie? Okay, thank you, Katie. Jeanette made the motion. Katie seconded the motion to approve that motion of withdrawal and providing $16.9 million in project funding. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, may I say a word?
Please.
Thank you so much. I believe I might be the only member of the VRE Operations Board on this committee, so I just wanted to take a second to speak to it in that capacity, and also the immediate past chair of the Operations Board, and appreciate the authority's work in close collaboration with VRE staff, particularly its finance staff. And I think that this is well characterized in terms of the position of the Virginia Railway Express with regard to moving these projects forward. I wanted to share my hope with members of this committee, although I don't believe the discussion of reallocation is on our agenda. I believe that's mostly for the PPC tomorrow evening. But it would certainly be my hope that we might see some of these dollars that might have otherwise been awarded to VRE, awarded instead to another project that is equally critical for the future of VRE expansion, and that is the DRPT Franconia Springfield Passenger Rail Bypass Project. Very much in the same neck of the woods as some of these projects, and in fact, really the key project that will allow VRE to expand its service altogether by separating commuter and passenger rail, or excuse me, separating commuter rail from commercial, i.e. freight rail. Without that project, will be much slowed in realizing the actual benefits of service expansion, because we'll be continuing to jockey for slots on that one railway system. So appreciate the opportunity to raise that from the perspective of the Operations Board and how critical that latter project is towards us. And I know that we're all really looking forward on the VRE side to taking up again this program of expansions at stations once we have the expansion of the rail corridor in place.
Katie, let me say this to that. First of all, well said. And second, Arlington should be proud of an advocate such as yourself. So I think you're correct. However, the funding starts here, but the PPC will take up the matter of how the funding is spent tomorrow. And then ultimately, obviously, we'll all get the opportunity to take a look at it at the NVTA.
And tomorrow actually will be as part of a team interviewing the new VRE CEO. So I bring this up today in the potential chance that I may not be able to poke my head into PPC and make the case tomorrow. So thank you for letting me use this forum.
Somehow I thought you might. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Delegate Rowe.
Delegate, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to piggyback on just what Supervisor Crystal was just talking about, I spoke to the DRPT Secretary Jennifer Mitchell this afternoon, and she echoed basically the same idea in terms of right now the MVTA is looking at partial funding according to staff recommendation for their Franconia project, and she just wants to basically see if we can get that as close to the requested funding amount that they're looking for. And I would be certainly supportive of that, especially given that the more we can do to expedite delivery of the $3.7 billion CSX deal that we're doing right now, the more we're going to be able to turn toward Norfolk Southern, for example, to start getting them to, hopefully get on board with the Manassas line. And where we're looking at right now is if Norfolk Southern does come on board, and we can strike a similar deal, Mr. Chairman, for your district, mine, and for Mayor Rishel as well, we know that increased level of services by having extra 4 to 5 trains on the Manassas line, not to mention the new parking garage going into Manassas Park, not to mention that DRPT is going to be reevaluating the extension of VRE from the Broad Run station out to Gainesville after my budget amendment passed this year, and they're going to be doing that either this year or next year. I think we're in a really good position right now to basically seal off the CSX deal as quickly as possible and start turning attention toward Norfolk Southern.
Delegate, another good example of an advocate, and I look forward to having a private conversation with you with regard to several issues along the way. I know we missed the opportunity last time, but we will have the opportunity to have a private discussion about several items along the way. I look forward to that. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Mike, if you could call the roll again, I'd appreciate it.
Certainly. Mayor Parish?
Yes.
Mayor Rochelle?
Yes.
Chair Randall, be sure to.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. Yes. I don't know what happened.
What was that, Mike?
Yes.
Okay, very good. I know I have to remember to turn my mic back on and then off again so we don't have echoes here in the room. Again, thank you all for that. It moves us forward in our agenda. That takes care of our action items as indicated, at least in the agenda, but does move us on to what's been at this point classed as an information and discussion item. Nevertheless, a pretty important item, and I suspect each of us have had a number of conversations with regard. I have asked, as I mentioned earlier, I have asked our staff to take a pretty good amount of time to help us with both of these items, particularly this one, as we understand better both the legislation that we deal with regard to our funding and other matters, including Policy 29 that the NVTA has passed with regard to the WMATA traction power upgrades. Item number 5 relates to the WMATA Orange Blue Line traction power projects and its potential cancellation. And so, Mike, if you could begin there, and I know Monica and maybe others might have some conversation that would help us with this one.
Thank you, Mayor Parish. This issue first came to the Finance Committee's attention in September of last year when we were presenting our first Policy 29 report. While the projects...
Excuse me, Mike, it's really hard to hear you. I don't know if there's anything you can do to boost your volume, but I'm struggling and I'm in a very quiet room. I don't know if that's true for others.
Mary, again, thank you. I know we had that challenge last time, so let's see if we can get that fixed.
Did that improve anything?
Mike, would you be able to hold your mouthpiece near to your mouth, maybe, if that would help? Yeah.
Is this better?
Yeah. Ms. Hines, do you think this is better?
Okay. Okay. This item first came to the Finance Committee's attention in September 2019, and as part of the first Policy 29 report. While it didn't fit the strict guidelines of Policy 29, we did bring it forward to the Finance Committee because we had ongoing concerns for, I think, over a year prior to September of 2019 about these two projects. I will kind of equate the situation as each project sits on a three-legged stool. You lose any one of those three legs and the stool, as we know, topples over. Those three legs are what is known as the ALBO Amendment, or Resolution, I believe, 14-8, which requires other jurisdictions to contribute an appropriate share of a region-wide, to include DC and Maryland, type of infrastructure advancement. We have received information from WMATA on that for the Orange Line, and I think we're at a comfortable place with that. We have received information from WMATA on the Blue Line that, quite frankly, I haven't had time to look at. The second leg is the amount of overhead that WMATA charges on projects. WMATA charges 2 to 3 to even 4 times the amount of overhead on a project that our regional jurisdictions do. So we've raised questions about that, and we are having an ongoing discussion with it. We did propose to WMATA at one time to exclude the overhead charges and instead just charge the authority for fixed items such as material, direct contractor costs, and things like that. And I think certainly given the relatively small amount of NVTA funding to the overall cost of 8-car traction power, that would have been a workable solution. However, WMATA indicated that their CFO indicated that he would not be moving forward with that. The third leg, if you will, is traction power. I'm sorry, is 8-car trains. Traction power does not by itself produce any congestion reduction. It needs to be utilized through the deployment of 8-car trains. The 8-car trains are what actually reduce congestion. And congestion reduction is the authority's mandate. Traction power alone would basically be an infrastructure improvement if it didn't result in something that reduced congestion. And the congestion reduction, we go back to the 8-car trains. In WMATA's applications for both projects, they cited that they would be committed to traction power by 2025. And that gave them an appreciable amount of time, since the first funding approval was for the 2014 program, and the second funding approval was in the 17 program. That gave them an appreciable amount of time through their Momentum program to get up to, on the Orange Line, 100% 8-car trains, and on the Blue Line, as it says in the report, substantially 8-car trains. We've raised this issue several times with WMATA. We've asked them for updates. We've asked them for a plan that when they plan to get to 8-car trains. Last year, they said it was a fiscal 20 budget decision. It was in the fiscal 20 budget, but it was not acted on by the WMATA board. Or more recently, we asked them about any current plans, and again, we were told it was a FY21 budget issue. However, in the pre-pandemic draft budget for WMATA, we found no reference to 8-car trains, and we've asked WMATA to point out where there was even an FY21 budget issue. And again, this is pre-pandemic. And of course, speaking of the pandemic, that ultimately changes, I think, many decisions around the deployment of 8-car trains for WMATA. So at this point, the staff recommendation is to cancel the projects, or if WMATA can produce a schedule that's acceptable, and we may still end up with those other legs to deal with. But I haven't spent time, quite frankly, examining those while we have this bigger question of, will the authority's investment actually end up reducing congestion, building capacity, because it cannot be just a pure infrastructure improvement. We are not by law allowed to make that type of project funding. And with that, I'll see if Ms. Backman would like to cover anything I may have missed.
Monica, there are a couple of pieces that I think that we are aware of that we need to remind ourselves of. I know that I do. For example, the legislation that provided the revenue sources for the NVTA requires congestion reduction relative to cost. And I know there's also a potential legal issue, or some would call it a kill switch, that if the NVTA doesn't accomplish its function as is indicated legislatively, the NVTA could literally go away. Could you help us with regard to just generally, not related directly to the WMATA issue, but the NVTA responsibility?
Thank you, Mayor Parish. Essentially, the authority by law, we are not permitted to fund maintenance or operations. And when you reference the kill switch, there is something in the law we refer to as the kill switch, but if it is determined that we are using the 70% regional revenues outside of what is in the confines of the law, that, we could face some legal concerns.
Okay, now, with regard to WMATA, any thoughts?
Well, I think Mr. Longhi articulated very well. Again, we want to work, number one, I'll say, with all of our regional partners. That is the first thing. We want to make sure we can work with all of our regional partners. For us, I think we do need further discussions on a date certain regarding capacity addition component that 8-car trains, that traction power upgrades actually facilitates. Because as we know, the traction power upgrades in itself does not give us the increased capacity. However, it is the vehicle for, the 100% 8-car trains. And that's really the information or additional information or conversations we need to have.
Mr. Chairman? Chair Randall?
Let's see, Chair Randall.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So right now, I have been speaking with Matt Letourneau, who happens to be both my colleague but representative on WMATA, and we are trying to set up a meeting early next week that I see Ms. Crystal shaking her head, that she would be part of, as would Ms. Backman, Mr. Longhi, and you, Mr. Chairman, as Chair of Finance, and then the appropriate people from WMATA as well. And so we're hoping to get this meeting set up. I've talked to Mr. Letourneau as early as Tuesday or Wednesday, which may at least bring more of the information that we need out so that we can talk about the entire issue with more clarity, more information on both sides. And so we are looking to set that meeting up early next week. In fact, probably before the day's out, people will get the invite to the meeting. If that helps, it would, at the very least, it would give us all the same information. How people might interpret that information may look different, but we will all at least receive the same information, because right now I think that the WMATA board and NVTA may have, I don't know if it's different understanding of the information or literally different information, but I do believe that the staff need to talk, as do some of the electeds on each body, so that we can get on the same page to decide how the information should be interpreted on both bodies.
Chair Randall, I know that you and I had an earlier conversation, and it was a very frank conversation, and I very much appreciate that. And I'm supportive of what you're suggesting, and would be pleased to be involved in that meeting. And in fact, look forward to making sure that we have the information that will be discussed. I see a hand by Mayor Rochelle.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am also supportive of Chair Randall's suggestion, and that is much appreciated. And I think it's important that that discussion be extremely fact-based. There is something that I'm a little bit puzzled about. WMATA gets, my understanding is, about $150 million more each year, and is fortunate to now have that. This particular, it's also my understanding that this particular project they are resisting, the withdrawal of it. It represents about $20 million. So I'm just puzzled as to why WMATA is resisting the withdrawal, considering that they have now 150 million more a year. It seems to me that something else is at work here, and I'm wondering what that might be. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Watts.
Help me with who that was?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Watts.
Delegate, welcome, by the way. It's good to see you.
Great to be with you all. If I can just offer this perspective, I definitely appreciate the conversation that we are currently having to clarify this with WMATA, because I hope our recommendation will not reflect that the nexus between the transaction power upgrade and the 8-car trains isn't something that couldn't be honored under the enabling legislation, because the two things do go together. But to clarify where WMATA is coming from, why this can't be funded under the long-term maintenance borrowing that the $150 million has financed, along with the other two jurisdictions, the annual payment is something that needs to be clarified, as well as whether it is purely a timing issue because of the effect of COVID on revenue and ridership. But all of that needs to be clarified, and I really am very glad that Chairman Randall is taking this initiative, because I do not want to set the precedent that we couldn't fund the enabling technology for 8-car trains.
Mr. Chairman, it's Mary Hines.
Mary, welcome.
Thanks. I was the WMATA board member at the time that this project, both these projects were submitted. And it seems to me that there's a tiny bit of the past story which might be helpful to you. I am absolutely supportive of the authority trying to get this sorted out, but the landscape was very different in 2014 and 2015 from what it is today. We had not yet finished the procurement of the 7,000 series cars. And the plan was that more than half of those cars were going to be used to expand the fleet. So we were going to add, and this was beyond what the Silver Line, this is before the Silver Line opens too. So this is beyond what the Silver Line was going to need. We were going to see a major expansion of the fleet. And it was in that context that we argued that the traction power upgrades were fundable by NVTA, because we couldn't actually run 8-car trains without upgrading the power. Significant numbers, 100% all 8-car trains. The other fact that's important for people to know is that the earlier series of cars were procured in pairs of 2. The 7,000 car series are configured, they can only run as 4s. So you either have a choice of a 4-car train or an 8-car train with the 7,000 series. So again, it was possible for WMATA to say, yeah, we'll run the 8s on the lines that you guys are paying for improving, and you will absolutely see an increase in carrying capacity. And it was in that context that this all happened. Subsequently, I left the board in 2015 when I left the Arlington County Board. And after that, decisions were made to use those cars to basically replace 2 of the series of existing cars in the fleet. So no major expansion in number of cars. And my memory is a very small number we're actually going to be able, maybe 8 cars max. So that's a real change in the landscape of what we were operating in, and why we believed that there was no question at the time that the traction power upgrades were essential to achieving the capacity expansion that we had been promised. So I just want everybody to know that story. The board did take those actions, the WMATA board did take those actions to redirect the purchase of the 7,000 into replacing many more cars than originally intended. So, and now, of course, we're in a situation where ridership is pretty much in the tank. So life has changed, but I thought it would be helpful for you to know the circumstance under which the proposal was submitted to NVTA.
Sure, Mary, that's very thankful. I'm thankful for that and very thoughtful. I appreciate it. You know, talking about the expansion of the fleet and then ultimately no major expansion. So that does provide some clarification. Any other thoughts? Katie?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to speak a little bit in the capacity as NVTC chairman, which is the body by which the Northern Virginia jurisdictions that pay into Metro organize ourselves and have impact over Metro's budgets, including our capital budget. So, Mayor Rischel, it's an excellent question. What I would answer in short is that Virginia's contribution, along with Maryland and the districts, to capital investments is not just an unspent fund, right? It's appropriated in a capital program, which Virginia exercises authority over through our two WMATA board members, one of them Chairman Randall's colleague, who has been advising us on this and brokering a future conversation. So if the authority removes funding from this project, it will be the responsibility of the Northern Virginia payees into Metro to make it up. So I think that's an important one to consider. I think if it does, in fact, prove that WMATA is out of compliance with the terms of their agreement when at the time the grant was awarded, not at what we might have liked them to do or additional achievements we would have liked them to have made, but actually the terms of their grant agreement from the authority, then I think the authority would be right to remove funding, to cancel funding on that project already underway. But indeed, that project already is underway, and that bill will accrue to the Northern Virginia member jurisdictions if the authority backs out of it. So I would just like to bring that forward on behalf of those payees and when we gather at the commission, that's a significant consideration. We are very much hoping, as Chair Randall put it well, to work this out by getting parties at the table and ensuring that we're operating off the same information about the terms of that grant and whether or not WMATA is in compliance.
Okay. In just a minute, I'm going to ask that the statement by Jeff McKay be read as well, but right now I'm going to call on Jeanette Rochelle again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Very, very much appreciated. And I wanted to expand on what I had said earlier about having a fact-based discussion and fact-based decision-making. As members of the NVTA, we have a responsibility to follow NVTA policy because this policy ensures fairness among the localities, fairness among all of the project sponsors. Policy also ensures that taxpayer dollars, or that was the intent, that taxpayer dollars are spent in a timely manner. And since there's a difference between withdrawal and cancellation, I would see that there is some ground for negotiation here. But thank you very much for all of your comments.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. Monica, do you have the balance of Mr. McKay's statement?
Sure. So Chairman McCain noted in regards to the orange and blue lines traction power upgrade, he noted the complexity of the issue. He also stated that he knows when NVTA funding is involved and when we have projects with extraterritorial partners, it becomes more complex. He stated that he understands the concerns that authority staff has raised, but he's also fully aware about the importance of these projects to the future of WMATA and that they are largely underway. He says he knows that the orange line, he believes the work is associated with it and this funding is already complete. He says, rather than canceling the project, I agree that it makes sense for all parties to meet and discuss the issues that have been raised. As partners with both the authority and WMATA, I offer my staff's assistance to facilitate a resolution if that is helpful. And it would be advantageous to see if there is a way to move forward that benefits us all.
Okay. Chair McKay wanted to make sure that both of his statements, the one for the previous item as well as this one, he wanted them to be in the record or on the record. I just want to take a moment to indicate the concerns that I've had, and I've had a long conversation with a variety of people, including Chair Randall earlier today. And I've listened closely to our staff as it relates to this matter. And frankly, Mary Hines, the information that you gave us earlier, frankly, helped me a great deal because I became very concerned. Why would we approve funding that became part of the bond validation suit for congestion relief that wasn't going to occur? And what you indicated was that it was totally believed at that time that at the time that this was approved, the original funding was approved and the second funding was approved, it was totally believed that by WMATA and others and jurisdictions and NVTA that the dollars that the NVTA put toward congestion relief, which is our responsibility, were going to be used for just that. Yes, it was traction.
Used quickly because
Stand
the
by,
cars
stand
were
by,
coming.
Mary, let me finish. As I understand it, traction power was the part of the vehicle to get to the congestion relief. And it was the congestion relief that NVTA could fund. Maintenance or normal maintenance and repair is not something that the NVTA can fund. Congestion relief is what the NVTA can fund. And I saw the nexus between traction power and congestion relief with 8-car trains. So if we're not going to get 8-car trains, then it seems to me that WMATA is out of compliance. And I know that I earlier indicated that I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I truly am. But if WMATA can't tell us about 8-car trains and congestion relief, then I don't see how the MVTA can make a decision to do much else than follow the recommendation of our staff.
So Hal, if I could just
Thank you,
provide
Mary.
one other, so first of all, remember too that there was an urgent need to get the upgrades done because the cars were coming and the Silver Line was going to open. So that's another urgency there. But here's the piece that I'm less sure how we should factor it in, but I think we have to grapple with it is the new cars either run in 4s or 8s, and they now make up more than half the fleet. And so the question becomes, are we consigning ourselves to 4s if we don't upgrade the power? And I think that's kind of where WMATA has landed, is they can't run 8s on our lines unless they upgrade that power. And ultimately, the 8s are the capacity enhancement. Now, I know I'm talking both ways, but I also think you guys are looking for a solution. And I think that capacity expansion is the job of MBTA, whether we're talking roads or transit. So, I don't know what to tell you about that, but I do want to, again, sort of say there was an urgency around finding money to get that done before the cars came. And now we have this complicating factor of the size of the fleet and the fact they can't run 6s with the new cars.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Please.
So the reason I brought up earlier in the conversation that we were going to meet is because there are quite a few other issues going on. I think Ms. Crystal mentioned that there's questions of if this is not covered by MBTA, who does cover it? Is it localities? And if so, what does that look like for each locality? How much would have Maryland and Maryland and DC done with this agreement? Have they paid already? And so there is, and I'm chair of MBTA. I'm on the board with Matt Letourneau. I pay close attention to these things, and I I do my homework, and I don't know I don't have all the answers to my questions yet. And so that's why I think that a conversation next week would be helpful, because I don't want to, as MVTA chair, advise one way or the other, have more facts at my disposal, and find out all of county contract with Formata locality, the exception of in Prince William or counties within county, cities within Prince William County. So that's why I was, I heard everyone said, and I appreciate them. I hear all the different thoughts, but it would be to not come to any conclusions until a further conversation.
Yeah, Chair Randall, so you know, I am not looking for a motion. This is on the agenda as an information / discussion, and we're having that discussion, and I thank everyone for it. I am not looking for a motion unless somebody wants to make one, and I am not looking for one. I'm looking forward to that conversation that Chair Randall, you suggested earlier in this conversation today. And I am mindful that the next step, absent the return of the money, which PPC would normally take up tomorrow night, but the next step after that is the 9th of July, when the NVTA itself meets. And I'm hopeful that some determination can be made by then. Chair Randall, you and I spoke about that earlier. Okay, so
One more time.
no, I just was talking about the next steps, either for any of the committees. The next committee meeting, absent this one today, is the PPC meeting tomorrow at, what is it, 5 or 5:30? 5 o'clock. And the next meeting that the NVTA has is after that, the 9th of July. And I would hope that a solution to this matter could be determined so that the NVTA could take appropriate action at that time. And so I wasn't asking for anything. I was just suggesting.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Those are the next steps.
You were breaking up, so I wasn't sure if either you or I was breaking up. I wasn't sure if you were asking a question or not, but we're saying thank you.
Yeah. And so I'm not looking for a motion, but again, I see a hand, so I'll call on Jeanette Rochelle.
Thank you. And I appreciate all the conversation that has gone on here. As I agree with Chair Parish, no motion should be made, but I do recommend that we provide no recommendation to the full NVTA.
Well, at this time, unless we take, sorry, got to turn my mic back on. At this time, unless we take action today, we will not be providing any motion or any recommendations to the full authority. Hopefully, the conversation that takes place, hopefully next week, we will be able to come to some conclusion with further discussion.
I was recommending that there be a formal recommendation of no recommendation.
Oh, okay. If you'd like to make that motion.
Okay, see if I can remember what I said.
I'll tell you what, why don't we let's just handle it nice and easily. We will not be making a recommendation from the Finance Committee to the NVTA with regard to item 5, the Ramada Power traffic power up project today. Is that okay with everyone?
So moved.
We do have a motion. I assume there's a second somewhere. Katie, how about you?
That's fine, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little confused on the process and whether that requires a motion, but if there is a motion to effectively table it or make no recommendation, that has my support as well.
Okay, very good. Then I'll assume you made the second to take no action. The first was made by Mayor Rochelle. All in favor say aye, and I assume everyone says aye to that, unless I hear otherwise. Is that okay? Okay. A little bit different, but that works for me. Let's see, that leads us to the next item on our agenda, if that's okay with everyone. Item number 6 is the investment portfolio report. We have Mr. Stavros with us today with some news.
I have some news. Thank you, Chairman, members, and attendees. I'm going to read the 2 points that I'd like to make on the report and then read it through. I have a prepared statement, and hopefully after that, if there are questions, I'm happy to answer it.
Thank you.
So the first item is a regulatory or NVTA compliance action. The second is report on the performance of the portfolio. On a compliance action, yesterday morning, over 4 hours, I sold $53 million face value of Toyota bonds. This represents all of NVTA Toyota bond holdings. We made a total return or gain of $553,573.19. The divestiture was a result of ratings agency downgrades of Toyota to single A in early April and late May. This is one notch below AA, which is required by Code of Virginia and our own NVTA policy, which follows the Code of Virginia on the rated bonds we can hold. As we have done in the past when our holdings are downgraded, as with Coca-Cola almost a year and a half ago when they were downgraded, we sought to sell them in the market to restore the portfolio to compliance. Since April, I have kept senior leaders, Mr. Longi and Ms. Teal, informed as to the status of the Toyota bonds. I have sent them regular updates on the market value of the Toyota bonds and the entire corporate portfolio, and sought their support for bringing the portfolio into compliance with respect to the Toyota bonds. The Code of Virginia Investment of Public Funds Act and our own NVTA policy exists to protect the public's money and for us to ensure that we retain only the safest, most liquid investments. I'm pleased to report that the investment portfolio is in compliance. And then on the next item is, this is the 14th month of benchmark outperformance. I'm pleased to report. Mr. Longi mentioned our performance at our last meeting, and he attributed to the excellent systems we have as a result of good finance committee decisions. We're very thankful for these critically important portfolio management systems which warn us to the ratings changes and market developments that can happen. But it should be noted, and Mr. Longi is a modest man, that all of the teams that manage portfolios that we benchmark ourselves against also have Bloombergs. I think it is important to attribute the outperformance to having a great team in place, a CFO like Michael Longi, which has decades of finance and investment experience, our head of accounting, our assistant finance officer, Peggy Teal, which also has years of experience working with investment professionals like myself, and finance analyst, Ms. Sen, has been excellent addition to the team. Having worked with many types of institutions and investment committees, it also makes a difference that this institution and this committee has been exemplary in providing resources, systems, and personnel in fulfilling the fiduciary duties of this institution. Finally, I will note that this may be the final hurrah on the investment portfolio performance for a while, as the head of the Federal Reserve last week said that he would be holding rates steady or at sub-zero levels until 2022. So this might give you a hint to how long it may be before we're fully recovered economically. Nevertheless, we are hoping for a quicker economic recovery. Let us hope there are still many happy returns in our future. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Stavros, thank you. Obviously, we're doing better than everyone else, and that's a testament to our staff, frankly. Any thoughts, anyone? Okay, seeing and hearing none. Let's see, Mike, would you like to go through the monthly revenue report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
And maybe some news of your own, right?
Yes. I'll start with the two reports, the revenue report. Mary Hines, can you hear me? I'll start with the revenue report, and that is the, thus far we have the June receipts or preliminary receipts for sales tax, which are down a little over 22% from last year. What that tells us, though, is it's within the range that we were projecting. I do see a good silver lining in that it's not worse than what we were projecting. There's a couple of stabilizing economic news on the front. You know, I think most folks have probably heard that the state is not experiencing as hard a decline for June as they anticipated. While they have different revenue sources, that certainly is good news in the broad sense. Also, one of the things that we noted when we did the revenue estimates was the sudden reduction in freight traffic. That has a broader economic consequence, but it also has significant consequences for the struggle with the I-81 related revenue. We had talked about a 70% decline in freight traffic in a 2-week period at the start of the pandemic. I'm happy to say that with that same tracking measure, we're seeing a 22 or 24% increase in the spot freight traffic market. What that indicates is the potential for a V-shaped recovery, at least in that area, which would certainly make the I-81 revenue sources a lot easier to kind of rebuild that. So in summary, while it's still too early to give firm information on the impact of COVID-19 on the authority's revenues, what we are seeing right now is well within the predictions that the NVTA staff had made. Therefore, we're not seeing anything that gives us additional concern. We think we've obviously accommodated a lot in getting to the $522 million for the 2-year update. And that's everything I had on the revenue update.
Okay, the good thing there is that it looks as though the revenue that we had proposed and suggested ultimately to the NVTA is coming through and should be able to count on it, even though it's down. Okay, all right, any thoughts on the revenue? Seeing and hearing none, let's move forward with the operating budget, Mr. Longer.
On the operating budget, I'll just note that we're well within our budget. We are experiencing some expenses relative to working remotely with the pandemic, opening up new technology channels that we hadn't envisioned. But we think that's well within potentially the existing budget, if not obviously well within the operating reserve. I do have one other announcement, sir, which I think you are.
I think you'd like to tell that to the committee, Mr. Longy.
Yes, I'm very pleased to follow up on a question Chair Randall asked at the authority meeting last month, which was, how does the revenue situation coming up with $522 million for the PAYGO portion for the 2-year update, is there any implication on our bond ratings? We have had an interim rating from Fitch Ratings. We are looking at their draft report, and while there are some technical things in the draft report that we will work through with them, I'm pleased to report that the draft notes that the authority will maintain its AA+ credit rating, which is the highest possible for our type of an organization to achieve, as well as a stable outlook. So maintaining the credit rating is obviously very important. Having that stable outlook in this environment is also very, very pleasing to receive. With that, thank you.
So everyone will know we're about done here. I know Katie just had to leave to go to another requirement. Is there anything that any of the members of the committee or others that are on with us would like to bring up? Any thoughts?
Chairman, Chair Randall.
Please.
Just nothing, but Mr. Longy, that is excellent news. And in light of, the General Assembly deciding to make our money available to themselves 2 years ago, and
well said, Chair Randall.
And COVID and all this has gone on, the fact that we maintain the highest credit rating for this type of organization that there can be is a testament to you and to the staff and to very good decisions that have been made and to the Finance Committee. So that is just wonderful news. Congratulations.
Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, this is Delegate Rome.
Delegate.
Just for the record, some of our General Assembly members in 2018 were sitting on the House floor pulling their hair out of their heads based on certain now former members' motions and votes at the time. So I just want to say some of us have worked really hard to actually fix that problem, and then we did.
Agreed.
So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Just a thought, there are challenges everywhere, and ultimately, I'm certain great decisions are made.
And we know who did what.
Okay, any final thoughts? Monica, do you have any final thoughts? No? Okay. All right, I want to thank everyone for coming to the meeting today, and I look forward to our conversations next week on the WMATA issue. Chair Randall, thank you for putting that together, and I look forward to it. And I know others do as well.
Absolutely.
Anything else? We're adjourned.
Thank you.